Yeah, welcome to the June edition Property Talks, brought to you by Anson Huang from Bailey's. This month we're gonna talk about the latest stats from IEINZ in May, what's happening in the global market, and how is New Zealand economic doing. The business confidence data from New Zealand businesses. Will housing market cool? Mortgage rates on 21st of June and tips from experts how to borrow. The biggest news, obviously, being the national medium house price has reached $500,000 in the first time, and Auckland is kind of lagging behind comparing to some other regions. The fastest growing region being Central Otago, up 40% comparing to 12 months ago. Then we have Waikato, Bay of Plenty area, Taranaki, Wellington, Nelson, Marlborough, and Canterbury. Auckland at 7.5%. Key Auckland numbers in May 2016. Sales volume wise, it's quite consistent. Weeks to sell inventory, what it means is that if there are no new listings coming onto the market, the number of weeks all the stocks will be sold. 2015 it was 11.3 weeks, but this year we're looking at 9.8. Median price wise, last year was at 749, this year 805. So it's gone up by 7.5% from 12 months ago. Days on the market, that means the average days that a property will be sold. So it's 3 days more comparing to 12 months ago. Let's look at North Zealand figures. Sales volume wise, it's quite consistent as last year. Median price obviously has gone up by 8.9% to $1,030,000. Days on market is 2 days longer than 12 months ago, but it's still very, very short. So let's take a look at the market right now. Taken from Tony Alexander, his comments is our economy to be chugging along reasonably well in spite of the troubles overseas. Well, let's take a look at what the troubles are overseas in the moment. UK are talking about leaving EU, and EU had bad structural economic policies and all the terrorist threat. American, well, they gotta have to deal with Donald Trump. China growth is slowing right down, and data is fictional, and the dip is flying. Japan failed to beat the deflation and ignite growth. Middle East, that's just too much going on there. New Zealand has strong New Zealand dollars and high migration, and the GDP annual growth of New Zealand is sitting at 3%. So we're doing pretty fine in the big global market when you're comparing other figures elsewhere. Business confidence in the country, which is very important indication that if people are confident, then they are confident in spending and investing. So very, very strong sectors with that including accountancy, construction, engineering, tourism, property and development. Strong sectors that we have advertising and marketing, horticulture, hospitality, manufacturing, and lastly we have businesses that are doing reasonably well. Business consultant and services, financial service, legal and retail. Okay, well, business confidence are doing well, so obviously someone is happy. So the question people always ask me is that will the housing market cool? In short, not likely by the end of the year. However, on one side, Auckland housing shortage is that in 10 years' time, we will need probably around 66,000 apartments to cope with the population growth. In other words, the supply is very low, and Reserve Bank forecasts that they won't be raising the interest rates until at least the second quarter of 2019 and probably beyond. So mortgage rate will stay low for another few years. On the other side, what could happen by the end of year is that 50 to 60% of LVR for investors buying properties in Auckland and 30% elsewhere. That means investors will need to come up with much bigger deposit or cash deposit if they were to buy investment properties. That's just to protect first home buyers, and 30% outside Auckland. Debt to income limits. That's something that our Prime Minister John Key has been talking about, that he is potentially will consider debt to income limits. So we talk about that more. We've talked about this in my last month's update. What is debt to income limit? So simply put, that's just a cap for the bank, how much the bank can loan you based on your income level. So if you were to buy an average house on North Shore, in April the figure has been $1,050,000. You have saved up 20% deposit, being $210,000. In order to buy an average priced house on North Shore, you need to have an annual income of $186,000, which is a lot of money. But anyways, retail mortgage rates from the major banks us at 21st of June. So that's the retail rates published by the banks. That went out pretty quickly. So yeah. Talk to your bankers or your brokers. They more often than not can get you better rates. So borrowing strategy from experts. Let's see what they're saying. Basically, ANZ, they are saying they could choose to fix spread fixed terms across tenor to stagger rollovers, but potentially they are recommending locking in a greater proportion for 2 years. Because our current rates are very, very good. Being that the chances are high that floating mortgage rate will be coming down in August. Before then, we're likely to see some small cuts in fixed mortgage rates. So in short, this banks are saying floating rates are good, or you can fix 2 or more years. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.